So, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore is flopping, right? Like, it's not doing very well. I mean, it's got a mixed critical reception, though it does have a positive audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So the people that have seen it, 80, I think it's on 85% or something. Most people that are watching it are enjoying it, which I mean is a good thing, I guess, but in terms of the success of the Fantastic Beasts franchise and whether or not we're going to get Fantastic Beasts 4 and 5, it very much depends on how the film is performing at the box office. I mean, Warner Brothers explicitly came out and said that, and, it's not doing great. As of recording this, it's currently on 280 million, roughly, worldwide, which in itself is okay, but when it comes to the Wizarding World franchise, it is the worst performing one out of the lot, which is not great. And as a fan of the Wizarding World franchise, and as someone who thoroughly enjoyed Fantastic Beasts 3 and really wants to see parts 4 and 5 now, I'm a bit concerned. I think right now the biggest question is, will we get Fantastic Beasts 4 and 5 if the film does not do well? I mean, the film is on its way to make probably roughly the same, if not less, than The Crimes of Grindelwald, which is not a good thing because The Crimes of Grindelwald was the worst performing Fantastic Beasts film and Harry Potter film, which in itself is setting the trend of diminishing returns. That's like a thing in business. You don't want diminishing returns, and yeah, that in itself is concerning. And I mean, you could argue that the film isn't doing as well because of the post-COVID cinema-going climate, but I mean, Sonic 2 made more money, I believe. And the question I sort of want to pose and or answer right now is, what next? If this film doesn't do that well, will we get parts 4 and 5? Will Warner Brothers greenlight one more so they can actually wrap up the Dumbledore-Grindelwald conflict in just one movie? Do they launch a new Wizarding World trilogy that isn't called Fantastic Beasts, but it deals with the Dumbledore-Grindelwald conflict? Will they wrap up the Fantastic Beasts series in a one-season HBO Max miniseries? Or will Warner Brothers just leave the Wizarding World franchise to rest, leave it to settle down, gather some dust, and in 10 years' time, relaunch it with the Cursed Child movie? I mean, we all know it's going to happen eventually. Like, Daniel Radcliffe has recently said he has no interest in doing it. But mark my words, in 10 years' time, they will come back and they will do Cursed Child. And now, hypothetically, if Warner Brothers was to come to me, they were like, hey Hamza, we're giving you the keys to the kingdom on the Wizarding World franchise. What are we going to do with this Fantastic Beasts stuff? I personally would greenlight parts 4 and 5, because if it's planned to be a 5-part story and we've only told 3 out of the 5 parts, you might as well just go all in and make parts 4 and 5. Tell the story as J.K. Rowling wanted it to be told and leave it at that. If they don't make as much money, that's fine, the films are now done and the story is told. That being said though, that's not very likely since I am pretty much a nobody who is an aspiring filmmaker, and obviously I myself as a filmmaker would prioritize narrative over financial gain. But I mean, realistically, I could see Warner Brothers greenlighting one more Fantastic Beasts film, and they tell David Yates, David, you have to make this a 3-hour-long epic that encompasses World War II in the Wizarding World and Dumbledore beats Grindelwald. That I could see as a possibility, and that in itself could work. If you make it a 3-hour epic that is awesome and action-packed and character-driven and emotional and visceral, it could be great. But I think another question I kind of want to pose is, what do you think caused the film to flop as hard as it has? Because it's still a Wizarding World franchise. People like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. People still go to the theme parks and they watch the movies. They tuned in for the HBO Max reunion. It's just that when it comes to Fantastic Beasts, do they just not care? Because as someone who thinks the first Fantastic Beasts film is just okay, and the second one is a bad film, but I enjoy it for personal reasons, I actually thought The Secrets of Dumbledore was the best one of the franchise. In fact, I hold it almost on the same level as the Harry Potter films. I mean, I think I like it more than Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Half-Blood Prince. I really love the cast. I thought the story J.K. Rowling was telling was getting interesting now. Like, the way the film wraps up, it wraps up in a neat enough way that if they don't make any more, yeah, that's disappointing, but like, yeah, I'm satisfied now that some characters have gotten closure. But then again, I just love things like Jude Law as Dumbledore. I need to see more of him. I loved Mads Mikkelsen as Grindelwald. And I mean, I need more Eddie Redmayne as Newt Scamander in my life. I love that character. Another point I want to raise and why I think the film isn't doing as well is possibly franchise fatigue. I think getting David Yates to helm all 5 films was not the best idea, just because the longer you leave someone on a franchise, the less creative they become, the more lazy they become, I think. It almost feels now that David Yates has been with the Harry Potter franchise for so long that he's kind of on autopilot half the time. Like, I don't think David Yates is a bad director, I just think he's a very inconsistent director. If you give David Yates an important film, like for example Deathly Hallows Part 2, which is the ending of the Harry Potter saga, and you give him the 5th Harry Potter film, which in itself is his first Harry Potter film, the film that he needs to improve himself on, he knocks it out of the park. He makes absolutely fantastic films. But I find that when you leave him to his own devices and you give him something like a Half-Blood Prince or a Deathly Hallows Part 1, or even a Fantastic Beasts 1 and a Crimes of Grindelwald, he doesn't really rise up to the occasion. He kind of just does his own thing. And in those cases, it feels like he isn't really doing anything super creative. Like, I'm not saying David Yates is a bad director, because there are actually two sides to directing. The first side is getting the performances out of your actors. That is the director's #1 job. And yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a David Yates film where the actors give a bad performance. David Yates is good at working with his actors and getting them to give the performance he needs. But the other side to directing is telling the story, and that is the side of directing that I feel like David Yates sometimes struggles with. That being, to me, it never seems like he interrogates the script, goes, does this make sense? Why is this character doing this? Why is this subplot here? Get rid of it, change it to this, simplify it. I feel like he doesn't ever really do that. He kind of just goes, yeah, let's make it darker. And that's something I found to be the problem with the first Fantastic Beasts film, because on principle, the first Fantastic Beasts film should have been fun, light-hearted, engaging. In many ways, it should have had the tone of the Paddington films. If someone like a Paul King directed the first Fantastic Beasts film, and it was just Newt Scamander going to New York, meeting characters like Jacob Kowalski and Tina and Queenie, and the suitcase gets opened, and all of a sudden they have to start collecting the magical creatures. If you make a fun fetch quest adventure film, which J.K. Rowling initially planned to do, it could have been much more exciting and fun. But when you look at interviews and you listen to interviews of David Yates talking about the first Fantastic Beasts, it's him who is the one that starts introducing the darker elements like the Senator subplot, which in itself is kind of irrelevant, but it's him who introduces that idea, who tells JK to go darker with it. It's probably him who told JK to introduce characters like Credence and bring in the domestic violence that Credence is facing. And I think that in itself is the problem of keeping David Yates around for too long. Like, he is a good director, he just doesn't always fit the style of film that the screenplay has been written to be. And I think that in itself is the inherent problem of keeping David Yates around, in the sense of he's been stuck with this franchise for so long now, and he has different sensibilities, but when it comes to something where the script is requiring the film to be a fun action-adventure, he wants to start implementing darker ideas and elements, which is weird because David Yates can do comedy. Like, although I find the tonal inconsistency of Half-Blood Prince to be a problem, and the romantic comedy overshadowing the Voldemort backstory, the romantic comedy in Half-Blood Prince is funny. And even still, I thought the tonal balance in The Secrets of Dumbledore was much better. But then again, David Yates does that thing where he doesn't always establish things as clearly as they should be. For example, the Credence Dumbledore fight taking place in the Deluminator, the way it is represented in the film is very confusing, and you have to really be paying attention and understand the Harry Potter lore, like the ball of light that comes from the Deluminator that goes inside someone and then that takes them into the Deluminator and all that kind of stuff. Like, things like that should not be as difficult to understand as they should be, but for some odd reason, David Yates decides to present that information to the audience in such a weird and confusing way. But also, I think the Johnny Depp situation and him being recast might also have played a factor into the lower performance of the film's box office, just because I'm guessing more casual audiences are just like, where's Johnny Depp? What the hell? And they decided not to tune in. Which is a shame, because even though I don't agree with the recasting of Johnny Depp at all, I think the whole situation is messed up, I actually thought Mads Mikkelsen played the character more effectively, and in many ways should have just been Grindelwald from the very beginning. Because I'm sorry, even though I would have been happy if Johnny Depp had been in this film, I don't think him being in this film would have worked nearly as well as Mads Mikkelsen, just because, I'm sorry, you take the opening scene of Dumbledore and Grindelwald in the cafe, and it's this scene of ex-lovers seeing one another, and Jude Law pours his heart out to him, literally telling him, because I was in love with you. I'm sorry, I could not take the scene seriously if Grindelwald didn't look like Mads Mikkelsen, but instead looked like the freaky Grindelwald Johnny Depp looked like in the previous films. I'm not saying it couldn't have worked, it's just that I just don't think it would have worked. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the whole situation right now. I mean, there's not really much we can do as a Harry Potter fandom except for go and see the film a couple more times, so that we probably, if we boost up the box office enough, can get parts 4 and 5. Or maybe we should just let the franchise die. Let David Yates go off and expand his filmography into something that isn't just Wizarding World films. Let J.K. Rowling go off and do whatever J.K. Rowling does. And just let the Wizarding World franchise sit for a bit until we eventually get Cursed Child, because they will make it. Mark my words, they will make it. They will probably bring in Steve Kloves to helm the script and get a different director. I don't think they'll get David Yates. I feel like Christopher Columbus has shown interest in doing it and will probably be campaigning to get it done. And so I have a feeling that that would be the case. I wouldn't even be opposed to Christopher Columbus doing it either, because although his most recent films haven't been great, I do think Christopher Columbus is a good director, and it would be interesting to see how he interacts with the cast, not that they're all adults and they aren't kids. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on the future of the Fantastic Beasts franchise right now. Whilst it is certain and is possibly dead, I do think there is a chance they will wrap up the story in some way, shape, or form, whether it be one final film that is like a 3-hour-long war epic, or they make like a limited HBO Max series or something. Either way, I think the story for this film might get wrapped up in some way, shape, or form, but who knows? Those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Do you think that the Fantastic Beasts franchise is dead? Do you think we'll get parts 4 and 5? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff, and until we meet again, see you guys next time.